once you know the organization's goals, strategy, structure, the staff, the system will eventually follow. You'll have to, kumbaga, map it out based on how you want the company to grow in relation to the employees that you've hired or you will hire in the future.
We have a question. How do you map out and plan for your employees' growth and promotion?
You have to probably first identify where do you want to bring the company in the first place. Again, growth in a company happens when your people are also growing. See, I've seen many companies in the past that has, they grew too fast, too soon, and forgot, the people that are in the company, and they didn't grow them together with the organization. What happens is that they kept on growing. They hired people from the outside to sustain the growth, but unfortunately, when you put in new blood, it's a good thing once in a while to eventually put in new blood so that it would challenge the organization. But if you keep on, pouring in new people from the outside and you're not growing the internal, it will eventually disrupt your momentum, your culture, and so on. So how do you map it out first? Is again, identify the company's objective or your company's roadmap. Eventually translate it to the structure that you have. I like this, by the way, Sean, I like this framework. It's called McKinsey 7S. So whenever we have our strat planning, we would usually use McKinsey 7S to eventually help us what to do with the strategy that we've come up with. So in that 7S, you have the strategy, the structure, the system, the skill sets, the style of the leader, and the shared values, and also the staffing, no, in terms of putting it together. So part of that is yung system, which you would eventually review and revise in relation to the new structure, in relation to the new types of staff or the number of staff, and in terms of the skill sets that are needed to eventually achieve the strategy that you've set for the organization. So it's something that you would first identify ano yung goals inyo, and then from the goal, the strategy, identify the structure, what kind of staff, what are the skill sets, and then eventually what are the systems you'll have to put in place. And I think this is one of them. We call that in some companies comprehensive talent development program. So I think, again, as I mentioned, medyo complex kasi siya, but in simple terms, once you know the organization's goals, strategy, structure, the staff, the system will eventually follow. You'll have to, kumbaga, map it out based on how you want the company to grow in relation to the employees that you've hired or you will hire in the future.
Wow, that's a high level way to do it. No? So in SEO Hacker naman, just to add to what Jeff already explained from how they do it in Zagana, how we do it is more of mas hodgepodge kami, medyo mas magulo pa konti, because when I started, it was just, I was just trying to figure things out. I really didn't know about structure. I didn't have Jeff's background in the corporate world where he was very much trained and led, and he has a ton of experience. I didn't have I had 5 months in HP grassroots, and I'm done. So I didn't know how to do it. So in my case as an entrepreneur, it was more of, okay, what do I need done in this area of the business, which is SEO. SEO has a lot of facets. You got the writing, you got the marketing, you got the technical, you got the design, you got the leadership, and then you have the leadership, the HR, and then you have the strategy. So there's a lot of facets, and per facet, we could see that there are progressions. So for the writing area, we have the writers, and then we have the blog managers or the editors, and then we have the leaders. So there's a three category approach on almost all the teams that we have. And then right now, we have opened up all the way to executive level. We're already developing slash hiring executives as well here in SEO Hacker. That's because as we grew, we saw the need that we have to have these new positions come in. Whereas before we didn't need it because in all, it's still a tight family run business and we're trying to grow from there. But it's gone very well so far. It's gone very well so far. But we do want to professionalize it. So this is actually the year that we have bumped up our first executive, who is a non-family. Next year, we're looking to bump up two people who are non-family to the executive level as well. So really, how I mapped it out is more of as we went, as we grew. That's how we mapped it out, and we were just 1 or 3 steps ahead in terms of mapping and planning it out. We weren't like 14, 15 steps ahead, which is, where Jeff is. He might be like 10, 14, 15 steps ahead already because of his experience. But in my case, I had to be a little bit scrappy, just 1, 3 steps ahead. That's it. And our next question is actually very timely.
Yeah.
how do you how do you ensure that employees are growing but they're not overworked?
I think that one of the simplest ways just to ask them. One of the things that I find really really amusing in most of the experience or companies I've worked with is that managers don't usually ask; they always tell. No, they usually tell you what to do. They don't. I think it's that old or traditional thinking that managers should know everything, and therefore they don't usually ask questions. They're afraid to ask questions because they might, kumbaga, parang they might look like they don't know. So I would say just ask them, ask your employees, ask simple questions like, what are your aspirations before you even hire them? You ask them those questions. What are your plans for yourself? And a lot of people would say, I want to be successful. Don't stop there. Just ask them, what does success mean for you? You mentioned a while ago, Sean, you want to paint the picture. Sabi nga yung KPI, you always define what winning looks like for you. It's the same thing. When they tell you, I want to be successful, just ask them that question. What do you mean by successful? What does it look like for you? And how can we both grow together in this one? Meaning to say, the company wants to grow. I'm sure you have your aspirations. How do you intend to eventually grow together with this organization? And you'll be surprised. You'll have so many information. And from there, bring those information to the boardroom or to your execom meetings, mancom meetings, and plan out your growth plans for each person within the organization. And by the way, here's an interesting thing, Sean. I don't know if you've experienced this in the past. There are some people who are really good at what they do, and they're really loyal, and they're really, they do so much for the organization. But when you ask them, they're just comfortable, and they just want to be where they are. And these types of individuals, you don't have to force them to, oh, you have to be promoted, you're so good. No, again, just by simply asking questions, you'll figure out some people just want to do what they can do or do their best in that current role. Then let them be. And you can probably also plan out not a growth plan, but at least, ask them what would probably make them still interested in the things that they're doing. And don't do it just one time. You have to consistently and constantly do it from time to time. Hindi naman every week, of course. You don't do that every week, otherwise you wouldn't have any more time to plan out for it. So yeah, I would say just ask those questions. Ask your employees. And the second part, Sean, so that they will not be overworked. I think this one is a bit subjective. Overwork kasi is something that some people can take on new things. So this is very, again, complex in a sense that when you ask those questions and when you observe as a manager, as a leader of an organization, sometimes you really have to provide some challenges so that they would grow. Sabi nila, and I also believe in this one, growth happens outside of your comfort zone. But that means sometimes they will be overworked. We cannot grow muscles without, I don't know, for those who are doing weight training, this for a fact that you cannot grow your muscles until you've broken, or you've lifted weights to a point of breaking your muscles, diba? So I think that's same with the no. Sometimes you have to overwork them, but not to the point that they will be too exhausted to eventually come back from it. I think that's the key to that one.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. In terms of growth in a SEO hacker, my take on this question is usually when people are doing something relatively new, kaya minsan lumipat ka lang ng trabaho or ng office or ng company, may growth na agad eh. Because if you're faced with something new, growth happens. I think the question is that how do you sustain that growth? And that is you have to keep challenging them. And what
True.
Jeff gave earlier was a good example, wherein you gotta make sure that there's tension in your muscles, because without that tension, if they're comfortable, they're not gonna grow stronger. So that's why you do your reps. That's why you lift heavier weights. You challenge yourself. And that's when growth happens. It's when literally your body and your muscles
Mm.
grow. It's the same with people. If you don't challenge them, they're gonna grow comfortable. They don't build muscles. Sometimes, in a metaphor, they become fat and they become heavy. Hindi sila gumagalaw. They don't like change anymore, and that's because you don't challenge them enough. So as a
Mhm.
leader, hirap no, dami natin kailangan gawin, di ba? Sabi ni Jeff,
Ang-
you gotta keep on asking them about their aspirations. Ako naman, sabi, you gotta keep challenging. It's tough. It's hard to be a leader.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
extremely difficult to be a leader. That's the life we gotta live. And tapos, biglang sinuntok ng, but they're not overworked. So, diba, how do you challenge people in a way that they're comfortable? You can't. Like,
You
challenge,
can't. No, there's no such thing. There's no
there's no
such
such
thing
thing.
talaga.
Exactly. They can't exist in the
Uh,
same sentence, right? So,
Siguro, Sean, let me ano lang din. In this one, I'm really, so this is something that I usually write about, especially in my LinkedIn posts. See, you mentioned about tension, there's pressure, friction, di ba?
yeah,
Imagine this, without these three things, you don't have pressure, you don't have tension, you don't have friction. How can you make music? There's no way we can make music without tension, without pressure, and without friction. Tama, no? So it's
yeah,
not about the tension, pressure, or friction that is wrong with the workforce. I believe it's how you eventually handle the tension, friction, and pressure as an individual, not as a company. By the way, just I'm an employee. I know I'm now hiring people, but I'm also an employee. I know how employees feel. I've been there. I'm still there. I'm doing that. I'm probably both ways kasi yung dinaanan ko sa Sean. I'm on both. So I understand where the employees are coming from. But as an employee, I'll talk to them, employee to employee. It's not the organization's or the company's responsibility for your growth. It's not alone. It's a bonus if they would do that. And eventually, having challenges brought to you is something that you should embrace. And eventually, you have to learn how to develop yourself in such a way that you can handle those challenges. And by the way, on the last note, Sean, on this one, as an employee, again, sharing this with you and how this helped me grow myself into where I am right now by God's grace is that usually we have problems or troubles handling these things in yung work because in challenges and so on. It's because yung capabilities natin is usually here, challenges are usually there, and the gap between the two gives us that kind of feeling probably of being overworked. Now, the key to that would be for you to develop yourself faster than the challenges that's being thrown at you. And that means that you would probably be learning something that is ahead of what you're doing already. And that's how I did it in the past, even up to now. I took my MBA without probably needing the MBA yet. So I was, reading books that are ahead of my current role, so that when I get to that level where I would need it, it's already there, and the overwork thing doesn't happen because I have more or probably a higher skill set than was needed for the job, and eventually I can do more with less time, and then I continue the cycle. And I think that's something that's on the shoulders of the employee more than that of the employer. I would like to share that as an employee to the other employees probably watching right now or listening right now.
I'm gonna add that hindi lahat kagaya mo, Jeff. Not everyone's like you. Like, there are people who are employed na they don't want to be challenged. Honestly,
Mm.
I've met a lot of
Yeah,
people like
yeah.
that. Okay na sila, they're comfortable, they like their life, they don't want to grow it. Yeah, they want more money, but they don't want more challenges, and if they don't get that, more money, okay lang pa rin sila. There are people like
Mm.
that. So
Yeah.
you just gotta know who is gonna be okay with you challenging them,
Mm.
because to them it's not extra work, it's growth. So people who
Yep.
put a high value on growth, those are the people that you as the leader can challenge. Pero
Mhm,
people
mhm.
who put a high value on comfort, iwanan mo lang sila doon, di ba? They're there. You need them din naman. So I guess there's just different people. And
Yep, yep,
you as the leader, you want to invest your time in people who are very invested in their growth. That's where you invest your time. Because people who are already comfortable, okay na yun, hayaan mo na sila, di ba? But yeah, as the leader, you gotta be smart with your time. Your time's very
yeah,
important. Invest in people who are growing, who are important for you.
right. Agree. Totally agree.